In the open sea, iron beasts move. With confidence and arrogance, American giants like Gerald Ford and Harry Truman roam the seas. These vessels are essentially floating fortresses, equipped with the latest advancements in military technology. Each carries over 150 aircraft, thousands of soldiers, and more than 12 specialized satellites for data and coordinates transmission, along with air defense missiles, the cheapest of which costs about $12.6 million. They are powered by nuclear fuel, giving them unparalleled mobility. An unexpected opponent rises. On the other side of the Red Sea stands an unexpected adversary, the Houthis. Armed with simple weapons and drones costing no more than $1,000 each, along with modified missiles, they managed to make the United States' legendary military power appear scattered and confused. Each cheap drone forces the U.S. Navy to intercept with a missile costing over $12 million, symbols of American power. In today's world, there are symbols of unquestionable dominance. Washington's nuclear aircraft carriers patrol the oceans like floating military camps. But what if all this immense power and spending, surpassing the budgets of entire nations, was forced to retreat and withdraw due to low-cost, tactical strikes? The new reality, drones versus supercarriers. It wasn't nuclear attacks, organized armies, or Chinese or Russian weapons that caused this. It was swarms of simple drones, launched by a besieged Yemeni movement known as the Houthis. How did the Houthis use tactical strategies to shift the balance of power? Why were U.S. aircraft carriers supposedly invincible forced to retreat? Have we entered the era of the dead aircraft carrier, as some experts suggest? Why didn't the Houthis sink the carriers? If the Houthis could inflict such damage, why didn't they simply sink the carriers using hypersonic missiles? The answer is coming in the next few minutes. The absolute American power. Let's start at sea, where America appears invincible. An aircraft carrier isn't just a ship, it's a full combat system, a floating city moving across oceans. The most formidable among them is the USS Harry S. Truman, a Nimitz-class carrier operating on nuclear power. With a length exceeding 330 meters, a height of over 70 meters, and a displacement exceeding 100,000 tons, it's equipped with 2 nuclear reactors that allow it to operate for decades without refueling. It carries more than 90 aerial monsters like the Super Hornet, Seahawk, and Growler, and its defenses include anti-missile and anti-aircraft guns and advanced electronic jamming systems, hosting over 5,500 military personnel. Meanwhile, the USS Gerald R. Ford represents the next-generation supercarrier entering service in 2017. It boasts electromagnetic launch and landing technologies, laser weapon capabilities, and stronger arsenals than its predecessors, giving the U.S. complete naval dominance wherever it operates. Operation plan in the beginning of failure. In early 2024, U.S. military operations increased in the Red Sea to counter Houthi attacks on international shipping. To establish maritime deterrence, as the Pentagon described, both the Ford and Truman carriers were deployed for offensive missions against Yemen. The operation was supposed to be straightforward. Aircraft would take off from the carriers, strike targets in Yemen, and return before being detected. On paper, it was a perfect plan. However, the Houthis had prepared something called by Western media the Black Trap. The Black Trap, how the Houthis turned the tide. Once U.S. aircraft were spotted taking off, swarms of drones and cruise missiles were launched towards the carriers themselves. This forced American commanders into a difficult decision. Should they continue the mission or return immediately to defend the carrier? The decision was clear: immediate return. Multi-million-dollar aircraft were forced to abandon their missions early to protect their ships from drones costing around $2,000 each. For every cheap drone, American carriers had to launch defensive missiles costing between $6 and $12 million. The catastrophic impact on U.S. operations. Repeated Houthi attacks exhausted American defenses and depleted munitions. This forced U.S. carriers to retreat to nearby American bases to reload, rendering them unable to operate without a full complement of defensive missiles. Every mission failed before it even started, according to military experts interviewed by BBC Studios. The Houthi strategic ambushes. The key to the Houthis' success was in targeting carrier operations, not direct strikes. Every time a U.S. aircraft launched, dozens of drones were sent to distract and exhaust the carrier's defenses, causing mission failures. This tactic, known in military doctrine as strategic distraction attacks, forces an enemy to reveal its strength and waste expensive resources. Despite their superior technology, U.S. carriers found themselves spending millions against nearly valueless targets. Psychological and strategic impact. Beyond material loss, there was a psychological defeat. America's symbol of power, the aircraft carrier, was seen retreating before a besieged, lightly armed group. This humiliated the U.S. internationally, including during Donald Trump's presidency. American media outlets like Defense One and Military Watch magazine began questioning whether the U.S. model of overwhelming force had become outdated. The rise of the dead carrier concept. Think tanks and military analysts started discussing a frightening new concept: the dead aircraft carrier. Despite their size and power, American carriers were now vulnerable to small, inexpensive threats. What happened in the Red Sea wasn't just a skirmish. It was a radical shift in the future of naval warfare. Why didn't the Houthis destroy the carriers? While the Houthis do possess the Palestine II hypersonic missile, capable of reaching Mach 16 speeds and equipped with stealth and radar-evading features, they chose not to sink the U.S. carriers. Launching multiple hypersonic missiles could indeed disable or sink a carrier. However, the consequences would be catastrophic. Nuclear contamination from the carrier's reactors could devastate the region for over 500 years. Russian intelligence warned that a Chernobyl-like disaster could happen if a U.S. nuclear carrier was sunk. Thus, the Houthis focused on defensive maneuvering to push the carriers away without sinking them, a strategic choice to avoid an environmental catastrophe. Conclusion: the end of an era? The Washington Post reported that the Houthis successfully paralyzed the most complex combat system in the world without firing hypersonic missiles. They achieved something far more significant. They made the U.S. supercarriers look helpless. Brandon G. Weichert, security editor for the National Interest, noted that any future conflict with Iran could seriously endanger American carriers, especially given the dense U.S. military presence around Iran, which ironically weakens American security. An Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander once told American officials that U.S. forces are sitting inside a glass room, vulnerable to being shattered if provoked. Thus, experts are asking, has the era of the aircraft carrier ended? Will naval warfare strategies change forever?